Tonight we're going to start talking about air traffic control um, and the role that they play um, in dispatching. We're also going to kind of get into emergency procedures. Now, tonight I'll probably be letting you guys go a little bit early because we're just going to hit the main talking points in a lot of this, and then we want you guys to go back through and read the documents that we've put on the Google Drive, and really get a good understanding. We've highlighted the air traffic control PDF. Kind of want you guys to go through and just kind of take notes of the things that are highlighted. They're kind of the main talking points, and you can go along with as I'm talking about different things, and take notes on what I'm talking about, but then go through the document that's on the Google Drive and just kind of read. It's going to get a lot more in depth and a lot more specific as far as what we're talking about. Now I will use some parts from the slide or from this document, but like I said, we're going to rely on you guys to study these documents on your own as well. So, starting off, what is the purpose of air traffic control?
To reduce the workload. No, that's not the right answer.
To control local air traffic.
Okay, yeah.
Provide separation.
There's the key word, separation of aircraft, right? Do they provide safety information other than traffic avoidance? Do they provide other safety
if their workload allows?
Yeah. Perfect. It's not their job so much to provide a nonstop, information chain to the pilots. It's on the pilots and the dispatchers to go through and basically take the safety information that they compile from their weather briefing, from their flight planning. It's their job to go in and make sure that they're within the legalities and following the safe and correct procedures for the flight. Air traffic control is more. I kind of call them the traffic cops of the sky. I've actually got 5 cousins that are, or 6 now, 6 cousins that are air traffic controllers. 5 of them are working at Salt Lake Center and Salt Lake Tracon, and then the other one is working at Dallas Fort Worth right now, and en route center. So air traffic control is kind of a fun subject for me. I kind of have a passion for it. I tried to become an air traffic controller, but just didn't quite cut the mustard, I guess. I don't know. Their new testing is not the easiest and kind of has nothing to do with air traffic control, just like dispatch. But that's another completely different discussion. So this map right here is this shows the what we call the boundaries of our en route centers. All of the major airports will have a control tower. Even some of the not so major airports, like Ogden up in north of Salt Lake, or Provo. As we kind of talked about when we talked about airspaces, some of these other airports, they'll have a control tower, but it's only operating during certain hours of the day. Whereas our busier airports that you see listed here, all these blue dots, will have basically a 24-hour open tower directing traffic in and out of the airports. But air traffic control kind of consists of more than just a tower. A lot of times when we think of air traffic control, we think about the guys up in the tower directing traffic coming in and out of the terminal area. But that's not really the case. I'm pulling up a kind of a picture of how the air traffic control system works. When we talk about air traffic control, the tower basically is going to control a certain range around the airport. Usually a 5 to 10 mile radius for our tower. We also have what we call a ground. The guys up in the tower also work what we call ground traffic. But they're providing that. And then once the aircraft has left that 5 mile area around the airport, they go into what we call the TRACON. So our ground controllers and our arrival and departure controllers sit up in the top of the tower here. Now, their job, once again, is to control what's going on in the ground or the immediate area around the airport. Making sure that the runways get cleared off, the taxiways are, they're lining up people on the ground, making sure that aircraft are sequenced properly leaving the airport or coming into the airport. They're watching for ground maintenance crews and different vehicles that are on the airport. They're, basically just in charge of that immediate area, not only the airport, but that 5 mile radius around the airport. Once the aircraft departs and has left that boundary, they send what we call the strip down to our terminal radar control, or as we call them, TRACON. TRACON's job is basically the sequencing of aircraft arriving and departing. Once again, a terminal environment. So they're taking these aircraft out to that 30 mile range approximately. What if they're leaving and they're bringing them in on those final approach procedures, making sure that nothing gets messed up, or if there's something that happens in the, they're guiding the aircraft and lining them up for our controllers that are sitting here in the top of the tower, kind of filtering all of that. So this guy's job's a little less busy. Once they've left the terminal environment, they go to what we call en route or ARTCC. They're the en route controllers. These guys are controlling all the airspace, the Class A airspace. So where does Class A start again?
From 18 to
18,000 feet. Pretty much everything above 18,000 feet, these guys are controlling. Even when it reverts to Class C above 60,000, these en route guys are pretty much in control of it. Their job is basically to help our pilots navigate across the country. And that's exactly what these areas are. So once our aircraft is up in the air, has left the terminal environment, and is now in class airspace, navigating across the country, as he passes through these boundaries, he's handed off from one sector to the other, one boundary to the other, as he comes across. The air traffic controllers are given a slip. Let me see if I can pull up what the ATC strip looks like. But that slip literally follows the aircraft as they navigate across the country. So I've got one here. So the information on the strip is it's going to have information about what the aircraft is, what the estimated time of arrival, coming into their airspace. Or this is a really old one, and these are all handwritten. Now they're all printed and pretty, but basically they can write down like what headings they've assigned to that aircraft, what flight levels, the weather, you know, if they've handed them off to different sections, and things of that nature. Let's see if we can pull up another picture that helps describe this. But yeah, so this aircraft strip, this is a lot more of what the strip actually looks like. Right here, let me see if I can find another. But anyways, these controllers are just following the aircraft and helping provide that separation and that movement from one zone to another. This is the printer, the strip printer. Once the aircraft is coming up onto another boundary, this printer will print off another strip. A guy loads it into the strip, gives it to the appropriate desk that's working that sector, and then he'll just keep moving that aircraft across the country. Now, once they've gotten to that terminal area and they've started their descent into an airport, they're picked back up once again by the TRACON, and they're sequenced in for landing. And then once they get into that 5-mile radius and they're on that final approach into the airport, they'll be handed back off to tower, and then from tower to ground. So you can kind of see that in this diagram here. So that kind of helps visualize the entire procedure. You know, any one of these, you can just see how it works. This is these are the different handoff points that you can see. But anyways, yeah, so when they're in these boundaries, they're talking to the center and getting that navigation through the boundary. Now, these boundaries are controlled by one location. Seattle's ATC boundary is actually based in Seattle. This one's based in, I want to say this is based in San Francisco. Salt Lakes is based in Salt Lakes. Denver's in Denver, and so on. And they're basically, they own all of the airspace in that area. Now, when air traffic control is talking, they use what we call the phonetic alphabet to communicate to pilots. They use proper communication and clear, precise clear, precise communication to talk to the pilots. They're pretty quick when they talk to you. Sometimes it's kind of hard to understand, especially because you have to read back what they say to you. I'm gonna send you guys a video of an air traffic controller. They call him ATC Steve, and
Well, there's also this app it's a really cool app you can download on your phone. It's called Live ATC, and you can just listen to communications from air traffic control to pilots all over the country.
yeah, there's a lot of different tools you can use to listen to air traffic control. So I'll post this video link here. You guys pull it up and watch it. This will give you kind of an idea of how air traffic control sounds, and it's kind of an enjoyable. This guy's pretty funny. When you listen to him, he cracks me up. But take this link, watch it, and then we'll all jump back on once it's done. So did everybody get a chance to watch that?
Yep.
Yes.
So that's the ground environment. That's a little more, and he's also working JFK, so it's a lot more fast paced. But that's full speed. That's how fast those guys are going. Don't have a whole lot of time for too much baloney, you know.
It's probably what makes him so quick-witted.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And he's been around for a long time, but he has a whole YouTube channel dedicated to his stuff. He cracks me up,
Yeah, he's funny.
I heard that. I heard that as air traffic controllers, you can only have that job for like 20 to 30 years because it's so stressful.
well, it kind of depends, but uh, but yeah, you have to be hired by your 31st birthday, and then you can't work past 65 unless you have an FAA approved extension. But you can only extend, I believe, for 2 years. So,
Hmm.
so yeah, air traffic control is going through a huge hiring phase right now, and anyways, that's another story. But but you could hear him talking, Lima Foxtrot, um, you know, Alpha, November, all of those are the phonetic alphabet, and that's something that you guys need to learn. I'll post the phonetic alphabet if you don't already know it. I'll post the phonetic alphabet on the Google Drive as well.
I'm so stoked I know a lot of it.
So please learn it. Even the numbers have a special way of saying them. I mean, everybody knows Niner, but there's they have ways of saying the other numbers that just
Like
kind of that just kind of help clean it up on the radio, so everybody knows what you're saying. So, anyways, yeah. So phraseology is really important when it comes to air traffic control. Um, let's see. So, um, let's talk about the just a couple of the procedures that air traffic controls uses to help them. Um, we have what's called tech charts, or I mean tech routes, and what those are used for. Um, and this is in that PDF file. But what we use tech routes for are for the in route structure. Basically, what it does is it allows us to use for the shorter um, jumps. Um, say Los Angeles to Palm Springs or Ontario to Long Beach. It basically, this is an image of the tech routes, of a couple of tech routes, but basically it's a pre-designated route that air traffic control will assign you when doing these short hops, and it automatically assigns an altitude, the route they want you to fly, and things of that nature, so that they don't, when they get their strip or when they have to work you, they don't have to spend a whole lot of time moving you around. It's kind of like a star or a SID, right? Where they can just you're assigned a route, and it's already written down what the pilot has to follow. And once they tell you what it is, you just go, right? So that's what tech routes are. It may not always be the most direct route, but it will be faster. due to air traffic control's handling ability. So we can find information on these tech routes in our AFDs, um, and it will actually tell you the route and the different waypoints, and so that's what a tech route is. When it talks about ground stops, so why do you think it would be important? So ground stop is exactly what it sounds like, right? Why do you think it'd be important to use a ground stop?
Because if there's too much traffic at a certain airport, air traffic control will have another aircraft at a different airport hold. That way they can create some. That way they can create some space for the aircraft that they're holding to come in later on, right?
Yeah. So basically, what happens is an airport is only able to work a certain number of aircraft an hour. Um, and you can kind of see this is LaGuardia. They have their demand on this side, which this is just an example. It's not very accurate, but say because of winds and different things, they're only able to work 40 aircraft in a given hour. What this chart does is it breaks it up into 1 hour increments, okay, and their demand per hour. These black ones are flights that have already landed and are already done. The red is flights that are still in the air, and the green are flights that are that haven't departed yet. So we can see at 1600, at 1800, at 2000, they're over demand a certain amount, and when air traffic control gets too high of a demand, five extra aircraft they'll probably be able to handle, but say there's 30 extra aircraft that they're expecting in at a certain given time, they can actually do delay programs or ground stops to stop traffic from departing an airport and helping them control the flow of aircraft coming into an airport. Or even departing an airport. Sometimes it's on the departure side that there's too many aircraft. So a ground stop, they just basically will not allow flights to depart a city, and until they give the green light, basically. One of the delay programs that they use is called a GDP, or a ground delay program. And so a stop means that it's just a dead stop. No more movement until further notice. Ground delay programs, what they do is they basically give a 15-minute, they'll assign a departure time or an arrival time. They call it a delay assigned, right? So we'll tell them, hey, we want to take off at 13:25. They'll give us an assigned delay and say, you can't take off at 13:25. You'll have to wait until 13:45. And then basically it will be our job to leave at that time, to keep the proper sequencing of aircraft. We have what's called a CDR, a coded departure route. So let's see where it is on here. Coded departure time is exactly what it says. It's a departure. It's concerned about departures. So if you get if you're in a ground delay program at an airport, and let's see, and you get a CDR. Basically, what that's saying is that it's a departure route, and it's used primarily to avoid severe weather and maintain systematic flow of traffic when departing an airport until the area of weather has been cleared. Um, so when you're given a CDP, basically it's telling you this is how you're going to depart the airport. Let's see. So air traffic control will file you a route, assign you a route to leave the terminal environment, and it's primarily used to route around weather, like I said. And basically, when air traffic control assigns you this route, you have to follow it, unless you have an emergency and cannot follow it. So the other side of a CDR would be a national playbook, where basically, because of weather or other issues on arrival, they assign you specific routes to route around them. It's only for arrivals. You only get assigned a playbook route for arrivals, kind of like CDRs are only given when it's a departure. And basically, it just helps relieve that pressure off of air traffic control. So those are the main points that I wanted to hit. I really want you guys to go through this document and read it. There's a lot of pictures, so even though it says that it's 40 pages, it's not really 40 pages. And like I said before, we've highlighted the really pertinent information that we want you guys to pay attention to. You probably won't be tested on any specific, you won't receive an air traffic control quiz, but having an understanding of the air traffic control environment is something that will be tested on indirectly. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Does anybody have any questions about air traffic control or any comments?
No, sir.
Okay. Yeah, please read that and get familiar with air traffic control. If you have questions on it, don't be afraid to ask us and bring them up. So now we're going to move on to emergency procedures. We'll talk about, what happens in a bomb threat, hijacking, overdue aircraft, emergency incidents, emergency response, CMT, and the ERM. We won't go over these as much because that's going to be provided by the airline, whatever airline you work for. But we will talk about kind of their purpose. So, airborne emergency procedures. So these are the procedures that are outlined for us when these emergencies come up. Why do you think it's important that we have something basically telling us what needs to happen in specific situations with an emergency?
Why do they need to happen, you said?
Yeah, I heard somebody saying it.
Because when something happens, we don't have time to figure out what we need to do. We want to have some kind of protocol already set.
Yeah, it's really important that we don't waste time thinking, trying basically reinventing the wheel when it comes to an emergency. Um, you'll see aviation. We kind of talked about it before, where aviation is kind of built upon the backs of those that have died figuring it out, right? Like all the regulations, all the rules that are put into place are there because somebody most likely lost their lives in that situation. So um, when there's emergencies, we don't have a whole lot of time to think and try to figure things out. Sometimes we just have to rely upon the past experiences and the training that we've received in those areas. And um, yeah, so that's why we have these specific emergency procedures. Every airline is going to have an emergency procedure manual, and they're going to um, outline what they do in certain situations. Some of the stuff is going to be consistent across all airlines. Other things will not be. Kind of some of the stuff that we'll talk about, like in the bomb threats or in hijackings. Pre 9/11, we used to have code words that we'd communicate over the radio if there was a hijacking. The pilot could say a code word, and it kind of signified to the air traffic controller that there was a hijacking that was happening. Um, and come 9/11, what do you think happened at 9/11 that kind of changed using those code words?
Not sure, but I know that the people in the hijackings actually attended flight school, so they would probably know the same thing.
Exactly. They were trained here in the U.S., and so those code words basically went out the window. So now, kind of across the board with every airline, we no longer use code words to indicate there's a hijacking. We just say we're currently being hijacked. And that allows us to be a little more clear and precise in how we handle situations. But anyways, we'll get to that part. So so this just kind of goes over. This is an actual emergency procedures that an airline would use. This is just kind of the same outline that they would follow. So this first part, it just talks about who's notified by the station personnel in the event of emergency. When it talks about this emergency command center, this is basically the OCC is the Operations Control Center. The ECC is the Emergency Command Center. It's kind of a place, like a conference room, a large conference room, that when there's an emergency, regardless of what it is, like whether it be a gear up landing at an airport or a full-on crash, a hijacking, what happens is an airline will basically activate their emergency command center, and the kind of the heads of the airline will meet in that room and start going through problem resolution, start trying to figure out how to fix the problem. They also will field like media calls. They'll watch media streams, and just kind of handle the emergency each one at in a very due process. So one thing that we do is we offer any assistance we can to the crew. They're going to be extremely busy when they're handling these emergencies, when they declare these emergencies. And so we want to keep our communications with the crew as minimal as possible. We don't want to inundate them with questions about what's going on, because we want them to be able to go through, pilots use what's called a QRH, or a quick reference handbook, and they'll start going through their emergency procedures in the cockpit and trying to handle the situation. And if we're constantly sending them ACARs or trying to call them on Delta radio or whatever way we are trying to communicate with them, it doesn't allow them the proper time that they need to resolve the problem at hand. So we want to keep that communication as only absolutely necessary transmissions, and allow the pilots to do their job. So in the case of a bomb threat, just kind of, this is just general. Typically these are phone calls, but there's always a possibility that it's an in-person bomb threat. One thing that a lot of airlines will ask you to do is, basically, if there's a bomb threat, they try to keep, you want to get as much information from the caller or the person as you can, and relay that information on to the appropriate people. If it's a future flight, there's certain procedures that they want you to follow. Like I said before, you want to keep them on the line as long as possible. You want to notify your supervisor, and then at the end of the day, that emergency command center, if it's needed to be activated, the director or the person in charge of the operation control center will make that call. If it's on an airborne flight, basically we want to establish that communication with the flight crew immediately. We want to figure out what's going on and how we can help, but then allow the pilots once again to do their job, and just do what we can from the ground to aid them. When we're talking about hijacking, there's certain procedures that we follow for those. The pilots will use their discretion to get out of a scenario. I will say this, that in the U.S., as far as hijackings are concerned, it's a problem that usually there's not a whole lot of cases where the person hijacking the aircraft gets away. Typically, they're rolled out of the aircraft in a big black bag, but or arrested, and so our hijacking procedures are tried and true and used in real world situations. So I ask you to refer to this manual. Depending on your airline, it may be a different manual. Overdue aircraft. So an overdue aircraft is an aircraft that hasn't basically closed their flight, and it's been more than 30 minutes since they were supposed to have closed their flight on the ground. So overdue aircraft could be something as simple as, the pilot just forgot to to close the flight out, or the gate forgot to close the flight out once it was done, or it could be something as serious as a plane crash. Oops, excuse me, a plane crash or a lost aircraft. So what this section will talk about is going through and contacting the appropriate people in the appropriate order to find the aircraft. We don't want to just immediately call air traffic control and start screaming and freaking out because we can't find our airplane. We want to go through the proper steps to find out if it's a true incident or if it's something that was just an accident. Like I said, a lot of times the air crews or the gates just won't close out the flight. And it's a simple call to the gate to see if the flight made it in, if the captain is, if they saw the captain, if he's at the hotel, calling the hotel to see if the captain's checked in. That may resolve it right there. But if nobody's heard or seen the aircraft, then we start escalating it up in the appropriate order. So when we declare an emergency, emergencies are typically an event or an incident, accident, or NTSB reportable, and typically we have to answer to the FAA regardless of the circumstances when an emergency is declared. So this part of the manual to kind of distinguish the difference between, is this really an emergency or is this something that we can resolve without declaring an emergency? An aborted takeoff would be a non-event. Precautionary landings, minor ground equipment damage to aircraft not requiring maintenance. And then it also talks about, these events that may have news or media coverage. As dispatchers, it's not really the dispatcher's job to be the personal, PR, public relations. It's not their job. So, when it comes to media coverage, if you're being asked about certain things, or say there's an accident while you were on shift, we don't go out and splatter it all over social media, Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, whatever it is. We don't talk to the press. We allow the airline to take care of those incidents and handle those incidents correctly. It's not our job to do that. So basically, we keep our mouth shut and just do our job. We have other aircraft in the air that we've got to take care of, and the last thing we need is those other distractions on top of it. Why else do you think it's important that we allow the airline to handle those incidents as dispatchers?
I'm kind of at a blank.
What was that?
But I'm kind of at a blank here to answer that.
Legality,
yeah. How many times has something been portrayed to the news that wasn't true or was blown way out of proportion, especially in the aviation industry?
80%.
or better. Yeah. So if information's being sent out about specifics of a flight, basically we don't want them to be misconstrued or interpreted incorrectly. And that's why we have those public relation jobs.
There are a lot of subsequent decisions that are being made based upon that information. So,
Yeah.
for example, we have someone from Hawaii. Look at what happened with the false alarm and all the leaps of information from that. It's just people make a lot of decisions based upon what they hear, and it can have severe consequences.
Definitely. Another thing that's really important to think about is the families that are affected by an aircraft accident. I know that the last thing I'd want to hear is incorrect information being portrayed about a family member or somebody I care about over the news for public information. That's not something I would enjoy or appreciate personally. And so our job is to be professionals, to handle the situation accordingly, and only relay information to those immediately above us that is pertinent information to the airline. So that's something that you need to remember as a dispatcher. We have a lot of access to information that isn't typically public access, and so sometimes we hear about things long before anybody else gets them. And we just need to be professionals and allow our company to handle it appropriately and take necessary action. People that get paid a lot more than we do call those shots. So, emergency response. This section just kind of goes over the proper handling of those crisis situations. It talks a lot about the ECC, and basically it just covers the specifics. Starts talking about the CMT. This is the crisis management team. They must be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to handle these situations. I know at SkyWest, basically our crisis management team, when there's an incident, an emergency, or something that requires the activation of the emergency control center, those are the times that those people that have been designated will get a text message. They have to respond whether or not they will be able to make it within a certain amount of time to the headquarters. And if they cannot, then they have to be able to have their backup there. So at any given point in time, they have to have 24/7 coverage of that emergency command center. The CMT team consists of somebody from flight operations, in-flight operations, maintenance, corporate safety and quality, people, that would be like human resources, customer service, finance, and insurance. So all those people that have been designated will meet together in that room, as I said, and they'll contact the stakeholders. They'll contact the family members of the people affected in the incident or emergency, and they'll also kind of handle those press, the media coverage as well. And then this just talks about the manual, the emergency response manual. So, and what information's in it. So this is kind of an overview of our emergency procedures as dispatchers. NTSB 830, we read over this early on in the class. I attached it here as well because this has information as to what constitutes an incident or an emergency. It also gives a little more information as to how we report those incidents and emergencies. So, like I said, I'm going to let you guys go a little bit early tonight. Does anybody have any questions on what we've covered so far? Anything about air traffic control, emergency procedures, or navigation, whatever? No? Okay. Since I'm letting you out early, I just highly recommend that if you have something to catch up on, video on YouTube or whatever, please dedicate this time that you would normally spend in class to catching up. If you're caught up, please read that air traffic control information that we have posted on today's Google Drive. It'll go over information a lot more in depth and a lot better than just that quick overview I gave you. It'll define things. And if you guys have any questions, I'll be available tonight. You guys can call me, text me, email me, whatever you want to do. And I'll help you guys out with those questions. I'm going to grade everybody's quiz right now. Once I've graded them all, I'll put them in your folders, and you guys will we'll talk about them first thing tomorrow. Just kind of go over them, and yeah. Is there anybody that, or if there's anybody that didn't pass the first test that would like to take it, do their retake? Just send me a private message. I'll keep the Go meeting open for about 10 minutes and allow you time to message me. But if you're ready to retake that first quiz, just let me know and I'll send it over to you. So, anybody have any questions? All right. Well, I'll let you guys go, and you guys have a good night, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Gary.